All right, folks, we'll call the meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting called and convened this evening, August the 23rd, 2016. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask Councilwoman Judy Albert if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. Please join us as we stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this beautiful day that you've given us, for our many blessings that you have shed upon each of us and upon our city. We pray for the safety of our first responders. We pray that you will be with them and guide them and direct them. And we pray for each individual that's here tonight, and we pray for our city that you will keep us strong and in good faith. Always be with us and lead us and direct us and be with our nation, we do pray. Amen.
Good evening. We welcome you this evening. Ms. Duncan, do we have anybody to appear in public forum?
No, sir.
With that, then, we'll move to the minutes of the council meeting from August 9th, 2016. Do I hear a motion to receive?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis, Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Departmental reports are contained in your packet this evening. Mr. Seifert will bring us our financial activity report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we bring to you the financial summary for month ended of July 31st, 2016. Starting with the general fund, we have revenue recorded of $575,713 with expenditures of $1,180,597. That is 2% under budget for July. Referencing the dashboards, we have a combined positive variance of $217,837 and a carrying cash balance of $9,632,104. Moving to the hospitality fund, we have revenue recorded that is 1% over budget of $176,060, expenditures of $14,791, and a cash balance of $1,159,255. And lastly, for the summary, we have the stormwater fund, revenue recorded of $3,417, expenditures of $9,833, and a cash balance of $1,019,824. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate the report. With that, then, we'll move to our presentation this evening. Ms. Kirsten Presley, who is our court administrator, is with us to present her annual report. And doesn't seem like it's been a year since you were here with us, but we'll assume that it has been. So thank you for joining us again this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's my privilege to come before you tonight to present the annual municipal court report. As the judicial arm of the city, the Greer Municipal Court strives to always exceed expectations while providing excellent service to the community and other city departments. This year has been busy, probably busier than the last few. Our courtroom and hearing usage has gone up this year. We have traffic court every Wednesday, preliminary hearings the first Friday of every month, pretrial conferences 6 days a year, domestic violence court the second Thursday of every month, 6 terms of jury trials a week each with plea days the Friday before. Greenville County Magistrate Judge Sims uses the courtrooms approximately 7.5 days a month. The Department of Motor Vehicles holds their administrative hearings for driver's license violations 1 to 2 days a month, which is beneficial to our department because then the officers don't have to leave the city to go to these. We're the upstate regional site for this, so it keeps our officers on the road longer, that they don't have to drive to, I think Union is where they had them before. So this is beneficial to our police department as well. The police department uses our courtroom for things like Leadership Greer, Junior Leadership Greer. The Youth Academy had their graduation and some training in there. We had training provided to the city by the FBI this year. And we hold arraignments 2 times every day as a minimum. and with the addition of a new full-time ministerial recorder, which I'm extremely appreciative to all of you for, that will move to 3 times daily, which will help the jail move their prisoners through there faster. So we are looking forward to that. I think they're really excited about that. This year, our arrest warrants issued was up 30%. We issued 1,377 arrest warrants and conducted 1,243 arraignments. That's 1,243 defendants with a total of 2,170 charges among them. That was up 2.5% from the prior year. Our search warrants and our orders for the production of records also increased this year. Search warrants increased by 53%, 66 of those were issued, and orders for the production of records was up 13% with a total of 17 orders for those. Our department is divided into 2 different sections. We've got our ministerial recorders, who are our administrative judges on one side for the judicial side, and we have a clerical side. Our ministerial recorders had a lot of accomplishments this year, but they are required by the state to have 14 hours of training every year to maintain their certification, which has to include 3 hours of ethics, domestic violence training, substance abuse, and mental health counseling. All of our ministerial recorders exceeded 30 hours of training, and that's because we want to make sure, as the laws change, everybody is aware and doing the best job they possibly can. So if the state requires 14, I usually require about 30. And they always, all of them exceed that. We hold quarterly in-house training. I do that 4 times a year, and that lets me go over any new laws or procedures from court administration to make sure that even the nighttime and weekend people are on the same page. They have to participate in online safety training, and this year was a recertification year for Judge Reynolds. Every 8 years, each of our ministerial recorders has to recertify as a judge, and she just did that a week ago. She got her notice that she was recertified, so we're proud of her for that. The Domestic Violence Reform Act was our big law change this year. Every year there seems to be a big change that requires a whole lot of work behind it. Domestic violence law had not changed since January of 2006. So it changed this year, and it completely revamped the law. It added in some gun charges as well that we needed to learn, different levels of domestic violence. So we've spent a lot of time in training, learning those, and being able to answer the questions for the public and the police officers on that. We've had a lot of new case laws this year and procedures that are dictated by South Carolina court administration that we have to adhere to. We had new gun possession charges that came into play along with the new domestic violence. And we had amendments to the Omnibus Crime Reduction and Sentencing Reform Act of 2010. This was a huge change in 2010. It was about 35 pages of new laws that came out that restructured a lot of what was on the old books. Well, they've amended that this year, and so they have restructured again a lot of the laws, such as arson, controlled substance laws, burglaries, firearms laws, breach of peace laws. So we are in the process of learning all of that. We usually find out about a week before it goes into effect that that's the new law that we have to go by. So we've been working on that as well. Manpower has been an issue for a while. This year we had some employees with some really critical illnesses that were out a long time, so we became really, really good at juggling schedules and were able to keep all of the time slots filled and keep everything moving like it was supposed to. But again, this new position is going to be amazing for us. It's going to provide about 20 hours of coverage per day with a judge in the office. So it will be hugely beneficial to the police department and the public. On the clerk side, again, training. The state doesn't require any training for the clerks. However, I require training for the clerks. They have to know the same laws. They have to be able to answer questions from the public. They have to answer police questions. And they also have to be able to not only answer the judge in the courtroom, but be able to quickly find that law when he needs it in there. So they are held to the same standard. They have to know all of the new laws that come through just like the judges do. They also have to complete victim service provider training as they deal one-on-one with a lot of the victims that come through the court. We have local training that they attend for domestic violence and crimes against children. They offer that in Spartanburg now, so I'm able to get more employees to that training because there are a lot more local options for that. And just like I do with the ministerial recorders, we do in-house training 4 times a year. And as they have in the past, they do a great job at maintaining all of our files, monitoring the programs and alternative sentencing that we have. They continue to foster our partnerships with service providers such as the Forrester Center or Compass of Carolina. Those two groups, they get a lot of our alternative sentencing people there. They do domestic violence counseling, anger management counseling, substance abuse counseling, random drug testing, mental health assessments. Pretty much if there's an alternative sentence, one of these places is going to be able to carry that out and follow it through for us. So the clerks have a great relationship with those departments. They are in contact with them almost daily. And of course, they also have to do the online safety training as everybody else. Along with the good, there's always bad. Again, changes in numerous state laws and case laws, they have to keep up with that. The Domestic Violence Act was very difficult for them as well this year because it came out one day and the very next day we had a flood of questions about it. So they've worked really hard to design all kinds of charts and things to help everybody with that law. They have to know any changes in bond procedures or paperwork, changes from court administration, and this year, for the first time in many, many years, the state assessments changed. The state actually took one of their costs out, which reduced all the prices, and believe it or not, everything that comes through the court, those clerks have memorized. They have every price memorized. So they have had to completely switch gears and relearn all the prices now. Last year in the state budget, there was a proviso that required us to have a contract with the Public Defender's Office for their services to continue their use. Well, we were able to come to an agreement. The agreement works well, but the clerks also have to monitor that in order to monitor the prices attached to that. And of course, my favorite, which I always put in red, is expungements. This year, we only processed 214. That's about half of what we normally do. And that's because every year they change the law. Last year, they took out all traffic charges and all city ordinances. That was great. That reduced our workload greatly. They changed it again May 16th and put all that back in. So now if the defendant is fingerprinted and they're found not guilty, their charges are dismissed or not prossed, then they are entitled to an automatic expungement free of charge. If they are not fingerprinted but have the same outcome, they are entitled to an expungement upon request free of charge. And the law works retroactively. They can go back and request one from all the years past, as long as the charge was dismissed, not prossed, or not guilty. So we expect that number to go back up into the 4,500 range this year. The strategic plan, we always work to improve our customer service. That's something that there's always room for improvement in. And we continue to foster our partnership with the police department and public services with our community service program. This past year we had 54 people that were sentenced to community service. It was an 89% successful completion rate, and they completed 1,332 hours of community service work. That time was spent picking up 1,600 gallons of litter, washing patrol cars, cleaning the fire department, working with Cops for Tots, working at Greer Relief, Greer Community Ministries, and several other nonprofits in the city. Our caseload held pretty steady this year. It was down just slightly at 8,333 cases, and we disposed of 9,809 cases, which was a slight increase, and the difference there is where we scheduled a lot more jury trials that were cases from the prior year, trying to catch back up with that backlog. Our bench warrant activity held very steady. It was only increased by 1%. We issued 602 bench warrants, and those are contempt of court charges for failing to appear in court or failing to comply with the judge's order. Out of that, 554 bench warrants were served or disposed of where the person either served their time or paid out their money that they owed on it. As I said, jury trials have increased. We increased the amount scheduled by 10% this year. That follows a 12% increase from the prior year. So 364 trials were scheduled, and that brings us right up to about December of 2015 as far as our backlog. Out of that, 279 were disposed of and 85 were carried forward. Preliminary hearings increased a good bit this year as well by 23%. And these are just for Greenville, general sessions charges. Spartanburg holds their own hearings. The municipalities have to hold them for Greenville County. We had 346 hearings, but that covered 528 charges, and that's the first Friday of each month that we hold those. The clerks collected $891,886.70, which was a 6.5% decrease from last year in the total money collected. However, on the revenue side, what stayed in the city only decreased by 0.7%, and that comes with, there's so many court costs and percentages, the way people pay, that it determines kind of what pot of money it goes into. So we held steady at $323,769.41. Last year we were right around $326,000, so that's pretty close to last year. And I saved the best part for last, or I think so anyway, which is our new domestic violence court. Last fall, we began a new session of court that focuses specifically on domestic-related charges. It can be domestic violence, but it can be anything related to it, unlawful use of the phone or harassment. It can be assault and batteries included if it's within a household. That was a coordinated effort with the police department, the South Carolina Attorney General's office, and Simpsonville Police Department. We also partnered with service providers like Safe Homes, Safe Harbor, Compass of Carolina, and the Forrester Center. By doing this, we're able to help everybody under one setting. It's the same amount of cases, it's the same amount of work for us. We didn't have to increase our staff, but we have everybody under one roof on the same day. So if the defendant needs batterer treatment counseling, he has access to that day. If the victim needs a counselor, there's somebody for that person there that day. If there are children that have witnessed this incident, there's somebody there for them. And for the children and victims, oftentimes the counseling provided is free of charge to them. But they have access to those counselors that day in our court to start that process. The Attorney General's office sends a prosecutor to handle every case, which really evens the playing field. Prior to this, officers prosecuted their own cases, and they're not trained to do that. When they would go up against a defense attorney, they had a hard time really competing with them. With a prosecutor, everything is much more level, it moves much quicker, and every case that's had a conviction since we started, the person has been sentenced to 26 weeks of batterer's treatment. That's critical because our goal is to break the cycle of violence, which is it's a multi-generational problem. It's a learned behavior. The only way to stop it is to get them the counseling to make them realize that they have to change those behaviors. In the past 15 years, South Carolina's been in the top 10 for domestic-related homicides. That's a lot. The last couple of years, we were in the first and second spot. So that's what really drove us to start this court, is we felt like we needed to do our part in our community to try to stop that cycle. The conviction rate, which I keep the statistics, and they are what they are. Prior to domestic violence court, there was a conviction rate of about 35% each year. The latest conviction rate that I calculated was 70%. And where that becomes critically important is not only does that person get counseling, but they also have, through a state law, they have their weapons taken away. And that is part of the component to stop the violence. 67% of the domestic homicides in 2014 were through the use of a gun. So it takes the gun out of the hand of the offender and it gets them counseling to break that cycle. So far, it has been a very successful program, and as far as we know, we do intend, it was a pilot program to begin with, we do intend to continue that. And we also did receive the 2015 City Achievement Award for that, which allowed us to present it for the Municipal Association. They didn't choose it, but they were wrong, so. It was better than the one that won. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Counsel? Ms. Presley, you mentioned early on that I believe it was Judge Reynolds had been recertified. Is that an actual testing process? What do they do to get recertified?
It is actually, every 8 years you have to go and take, it's the original certification test, but it includes all the new laws. There's no There's no class to go down and review it ahead of time. You're sent a letter, you're given a date, and you're told to come test, and you have to pass it to recertify, and if you don't, you're done. So this is her the third time she's been certified. So she's made it every 8 years so far. But it's a difficult test.
Wow.
It takes about 2 or 3 hours, and it's all legal questions.
Good night. You mentioned substantial changes in the Domestic Violence Act. Without going through all of them, what was the sort of the gist of that?
They divided it into different degrees, first, second, and third degree, which they divided the severity of the charges. They have added in, there's lots of components that will bump it up to a higher level crime, like the victim's phone was taken away so she couldn't call law enforcement. A child was present during the altercation. There was strangulation involved. There are key factors that prior to that there was no differentiation in the law. If it was the first time you got in trouble, it was a first offense. The next time you got in trouble for it, it was a second offense. Now it's divided into degrees of severity, and the punishments have gone up as well. In city court, it used to be a maximum of 30 days in jail. Now you can actually get 90 days in jail for it.
And one last thing, you can remind me, I'm sure I know or have heard or whatever, our community service hours and workers, who arranges those schedules and monitors those hours?
Chad Richardson does a fantastic job at that. On the day of court, if they're sentenced to it, we fill out a few forms. We pass them to Sergeant Richardson. He coordinates everything and reports back the results to us. He does a great job.
Wow. Okay. Others? Thank you, ma'am. As always, pass along our thanks to your entire department and that mean old judge that you have to work for up there. Tell him we missed him this evening, and we thank you for what all of y'all are doing up there. Very, very busy department that I unfortunately think gets overlooked sometimes, but y'all do a yeoman's job for us, and we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move to the administrator's report.
Thank you, sir. Members of council, several items to bring to your attention. One, if in the last day or so, if you've had an opportunity to go by the old Allen Bennett Memorial Hospital site, you will notice that there is distinctive markings there that we are receiving requests for proposals for that property. So that is posted for that. We're continuing to advertise for that. Those requests for proposals as well. We'll be doing that through, I think, early October is when we'll be completing that process. But Greer Development Corporation doing an outstanding job of helping to get the word out. There has been good interest and inquiry concerning that site, but wanted to make sure that you know that it is also posted. We did that. So through, again, Greer Development Corporation and our folks making sure that it was identified appropriately. You may also notice that there have been some changes to one of the more visual properties within the city, and that is at the corner of Poinsett Street and Wade Hampton Boulevard. If you've been by there most recently, you've noticed that there have not been any yard sales or any of that type of activity at that site. There is a new owner of that property, and that owner is you. The city of Greer has purchased that property. And we have begun a process of cleaning that site, and we are receiving numerous comments from the community that it has taken on a completely different appearance. We certainly recognize that will provide an opportunity for us to create another gateway, particularly into the Greer Station area via Poinsett Street, but it also gives us an opportunity just to beautify that area as another entrance to our city. Glad to be able to complete that process. Our auditorium property is completing its renovations for phase one. We have 6 artists that will be moving into that property by September the 1st. So we're excited to be planning for the upfit for that artist space as they begin to make their arrangements to move into the auditorium property. I'm trying to figure out what my note says here. Century Park, sorry. Century Park is ahead of schedule a bit, but we are on task for September the 2nd to be our completion over at Century Park. If you've been by there, you can see that the concrete has been poured. That project has moved along very, very well. Great job, Ann Cunningham. Red have done an outstanding job of monitoring and staying on top of the construction there at Century Park for that construction site. A couple of activities that are coming up. Rail Fest, September the 10th. Again, that'll be happening here at City Park. We're looking forward to partnering with several of our railroad companies, public safety officials here in our community. We think it's a great opportunity to celebrate the heritage of the railroad in our community. So Rail Fest will be taking place September the 10th. Our Recreation Department started a kickoff today with a master plan process for our Suba Road Park. This is something that we budgeted for in our last fiscal year. We're not able to get that completed prior to the end of the fiscal year, so we rolled that over. They began those meetings earlier today, and we look forward to the work that they'll be doing relative to master planning out at that site, and then ultimately bringing a report back for council's consideration. As we look at activity here in the city, you can probably certainly see that activity happening in residential areas, certainly in commercial development. You're aware of many of the things that are happening on the industrial side. As we reviewed our permits effective the end of July, we have already surpassed all of our 2015 marks for the same period 1 year prior. So 7 months into the year, we have already surpassed where we were in the previous year. Growth is very, very strong for us as we continue to move forward. You may notice over at the fire department, police department parking area, we are beginning the construction there of an emergency kiosk station. That is a safe zone that is being created for our community so that if you do business like eBay or other online type work, if you need to meet someone, we've created a safe place in our community that meeting can take place. And then there's also emergency communications there so that folks feel safe in being able to conduct those types of transactions. These are popping up in communities all over the country. We certainly felt that it was appropriate for us to provide a safe haven area for our community as well. You will notice that if you are among the 50% of our residents that will be having a change on the garbage curbside pickup service, those markings have gone out. We're starting to put placards in communities around the neighborhoods. Hangers have gone out on all of the garbage cans. All of our website information has been updated, but those changes will take place next Monday, September the 29th. We are anticipating that there will be some folks that maybe did not adhere to the message that we have communicated, and so our vendor is prepared to make sure that we are following up with our residents to ensure that we are educating them as well as making sure we are transitioning them to their new pickup date. Again, about 50% of our residents will be affected by that. We are also working with our police department relative to our truck routes. One of the things that we've heard from some of you as well as some of our community is that we are continuing to get some truck traffic in our downtown area. We believe we've been successful in communicating and working with the inland port personnel. We are not receiving many of those types of trucks, but what we are getting are delivery trucks, trucks that are passing through our city from a point outside our city to a point beyond our city. And what we are finding is that GPS and those types of directional tools that they use are bringing them through our area. Our police department is working diligently on this issue. They're working with the truckers themselves. They're working with trucker industry, they're working with dispatchers, and then they also are working with SCDOT As you are aware, we have some posted alternate truck routes that are more central to the city. We're working with SCDOT now to look at expanding that a little farther out. It is both DOT's belief and our traffic units division's belief that if we can divert that traffic a little farther outside the city, that we will have more success in doing that. So they are continuing to work on that issue, and they're making some great strides with that as well. I would like to ask council's consideration tonight for two matters in executive session. Both of those are personnel issues, one involving our courts department and one involving our police department. That would be my request of council's consideration executive session for two personnel matters. That concludes my report. Certainly available for any questions that you may have.
Speakers, I've been made aware of a situation that involves ordinance 23-2016 and 24-2016, which we passed our last meeting. It's involved two properties, actually one property, well, two properties side by side on Westmoreland Road that were involved in an annexation. It's been brought to my attention by both the property owners and the developer that it appears that there are sewer issues in that area in terms of being able to either provide or even complete the sewer on that particular project, at least for the time being, and maybe sometime before they get that complete. Are you aware of this situation or any extenuating circumstances in regards to that situation on Westmoreland Road?
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is an area south of 85, and in that area, we are aware that CPW is having some challenges in the engineering and design of the system that would do the collection for the properties that would be affected by this annexation. We've run into some similar situations in some past projects, and the development has either been able to work through those either with the installation of pump stations or by being able to work with an adjoining community by being able to discharge into an existing system. In each of those cases, making sure in that area that there is capacity for discharge into the REWA system where they ultimately would do the treatment. In this particular project, it has come to our attention, we've been made aware that this is one of those times that the efficiency of the city may have surpassed the efficiency of due diligence for the development. We were able to process that annexation request, and we were able to get it through the Planning Commission and make an amendment actually at council. But the property has been annexed into the city, and the developer and the owner of the property have both notified us that they are having some concerns about their due diligence, and they've asked if there was any consideration that we could make, and I've certainly advised them that, you know, this is a legislative process, and that legislative process had been concluded by council, and that from the staff level that there really wasn't much more that we could do to assist them other than continuing to make sure that plan reviews and those types of things would move forward, you know, expeditiously, but not relative to the annexation, that had been concluded.
Given that situation, you know, seems to me in a case where we've got, you know, a request from both the property owner and the developer in this case, and an affirmative answer from CPW that it may take them a while to resolve this issue. The second reading was taken at the last meeting. From a legislative standpoint, it would appear that a motion to reconsider a second reading would suspend that second reading until we could get either more information from CPW or they were able to resolve the issue without completely undoing everything that we had done. Would a motion to reconsider at the meeting following the action, what effect would that have on the second reading?
If council chose to use the parliamentary procedure to do a motion to reconsider, what that does is it places the action back in status between first and second reading. It simply negates the second reading. The motion to reconsider, it's a complicated process if there's dissension or controversy or it's not a unanimous vote. In this case, as I recall from the minutes, this was a unanimous vote. And so you don't really run into the complications of who voted in the affirmative versus who voted in the negative, because again, it wasn't a controversial vote. It wasn't a dissenting vote. So procedurally, you could do a motion to reconsider. It puts that annexation back in a holding pattern, which is not unusual. We do that quite typically for development projects, that we will do first reading of an annexation, assign zoning, send it to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission ultimately will take some action, and then then will come back to council. It's not unusual that we've had a developer or a landowner who have asked us to allow that to sit while that due diligence takes place. What we have always advised projects of is that once an annexation enters into the legislative process, staff does not have that flexibility. That, again, once it goes to first reading, it is ultimately to council to approve or disapprove the first reading. It is ultimately council's authority to approve or disapprove that for second reading. What we have done internally at the staff level is that we would bring that matter to council for second reading once that due diligence has been completed. In all honesty, this project on Westmoreland, it's my belief that everyone was of the opinion that it was ready to move forward, but indeed that is just not the case.
So as long as we pass both unanimously, so anybody on the council that voted in the affirmative could bring it up for reconsideration. Is that correct?
That is the parliamentary procedure, is that you had to have voted in the affirmative for the original motion. Because it passed unanimously, that's all members, or all members that were present for that meeting.
Okay.
So any member that was present that voted for second reading of Ordinance 23 and Ordinance 24 could indeed make a motion to reconsider. If that motion passes, then it simply, second reading didn't pass. It negates that, and it holds until council would consider it again for second reading. But you can only take that action either at the meeting that it occurs in or at the following meeting. Which is this one. And the reason for that is so that you move on. It allows the legislative process then is final, and it allows things to move forward. There's been lots of questions about this relative to Westmoreland, so we did some research on it. We did inquire of legal counsel if we were interpreting Robert's Rules of Order correctly, received some clarification on that as well. So again, it's council's discretion. If the question is, can it be done? The answer is yes. If it is done, it simply takes that ordinance back to the status between first and second reading.
Right. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider item 23, 2016, and item 24, 2016.
All right, we've got a motion. Let's consider those separately. I've got a motion to reconsider Ordinance 23-2016. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or questions in regards to the action we're getting ready to take? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Got a motion to reconsider ordinance 24-2016. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Questions? Comments? Ms. Duncan?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first.
For 24, he did.
24.
First one was for ordinance 24.
Oh, Riley made a motion and
Judy made the
Judy
motion.
made a motion and
Riley.
who seconded, Riley or Lee? Riley.
I got that one. I just didn't hear the first one on ordinance 24. I'm sorry.
I did them as a combined. I said a motion.
Oh, okay.
For it, and maybe I
You
should
wanted
go
to
back
restate it?
again. Okay.
Yeah, just-
I make the motion that we reconsider 23.
24.
24, 2016.
Second.
Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, only one item of new business this evening, which is the first and final reading of Resolution Number 8-2016, authorizing a lease purchase agreement, Series 2016, in the principal amount of not exceeding $829,112 related to the financing of various items of equipment for municipal purposes. Mr. Seifert.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we bring to you this resolution asking for your approval and ratification of the actions that the management of the city has taken in regards to the lease purchase for fiscal year 2017. We did the RFP and received 5 bids ranging from 1.44% to 1.78% interest. We reviewed those bids and determined that the First Citizens would be the most advantageous bid for the city and have moved forward with that documentation. We are scheduled to close for the funding of this lease purchase Friday and bring this resolution to you for approval and ratification, please.
Questions of Mr. Seifert? Based on the recommendation of staff, do I hear a motion to receive?
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, in executive session, we have 2 personnel matters to consider. Do I hear a motion to adjourn into executive session?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. In executive session, we've considered 2 personnel matters, taken no action in regard to either. Do I hear a motion to adjourn from executive session?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. And adjourned.